Members of the league who are helping with all of this. Since Rosina took center stage here, this is Rosina Hirely, and Leanne Trammell is in the front row there, and you'll be hearing more about them in a little bit. We've been doing these election forums for around 20 years. It's part of our what we view as our responsibility to try and promote democracy and civil engagement. Civil engagement and engagement in civil activities, both. We like both of those. So, to that end, we have tonight voter registration forms over yonder, and you all who are running for office are welcome to put any campaign literature that you brought with you on that table. Another way that we work toward participatory democracy is an essay contest, which we sponsor for Plumas County students 9th through 12th grades, and Chester actually has been well represented in recent years with winners and honorable mention candidates. The contest is always on some question of civic engagement. So thanks to Feather Publishing for helping us get the word out tonight. And before I get any further along, I want to ask you to please turn off your cell phones. Thank you. So just a word about the timing tonight. All the candidates have 2 minutes to make an opening statement and 2 minutes to make a closing statement. In between, we invite you to ask questions of the candidates, and they will each have 2 minutes to respond to questions. You can direct your question to one candidate or all candidates, and even if it's directed to one candidate, all candidates are welcome to respond. So please hold your applause until the end of the forum. That makes it fair for everybody, and it cuts down on the time a little bit. All questions should be written on one of these cards, and if you don't have one, ask your neighbor. We have plenty of them. And Rosina Hirely will be picking them up. So if you have a question on a card, just raise your hand, and Rosina will find you and pass the card on up to me. We will screen the questions for duplication and for libel and clarity. In general, you all ask really good questions. I'm going to try to rotate the order in which I ask the question so everybody has an opportunity to answer first and last. And last but not least, our timer tonight is Leanne, who will give you a notice when you have 30 seconds, 1 minute, sorry, 30 seconds, when your time is up, and finally, please sit down. You don't have to stand up like this. And this mic has an on-off switch, so we'll just ask you to pass it back and forth. Okay, so before we get going with the District 3 candidates, I want to introduce David Hollister, who is the current Plumas County District Attorney and uncontested candidate for another sentence, 4 years. And we actually have 7 countywide offices and officers who are running without opposition, and we invited all of them to come. Several were interested but got sick. Dave said that he has not been in the courthouse lately, so he's healthy. And David, welcome, and you have 2 minutes.
Great, thank you very much for having me. My name is David Hollister. I'm the district attorney. I'm running unopposed, and I like to think it's because I'm doing a great job. My wife tells me it's because no one wants your job. The state of the office is very strong right now. We are fully staffed for the first time in 6 years. Our office is young and inexperienced, but I have never been around such a talented, hard-working, civic-minded group. So we should all be proud of that office. We are responsible for representing the people in all criminal cases. We work with county, state, and federal officials. Unfortunately, we can't always be popular. We have to be just. And sometimes we have to be the adult in the room and tell folks who want to hear yes, no. I have been a prosecutor for 25 years. I spent the first part of my career in Oakland. There is no more challenging or rewarding profession that I could imagine. Being responsible for the level of justice in a county is a huge obligation, and we take it freely in this office, and I think we do a good job. I run the office, I handle the felony calendar, I handle the juvenile calendar, I do in-custody charging, I do the extraditions, I serve on committees. When the garbage is full in the bathroom, I empty it. So we do a little bit of everything there. We've handled some significant cases in the last few years. The murder cases, Wallen Reed, Kenneth Stringfellow was the murder of a 2-year-old. That was a very hard case on our office. We had a couple of employees that had 2-year-olds at the time, and it was a torture murder. So that was a tough one for us. We handled a murder that happened at Butts Lake, the Stewart case that will be, they're going to televise it. In fact, they're filming 2 weeks from now. Crime Watch with Chris Hansen is going to be here, and they're going to do a special on that one. We did the Minerva fire last summer, a child molest case that ended up in a 17-year sentence where we were able to get the person back from Arizona before they crossed the border, and that led to a successful conviction. We do drug cases, burglaries. We handle about 1,000 cases a year, and mostly it's been with just prosecutors. We've handled some officer-involved shootings, and the thing that I'm probably most proud of is that there have been no reversals. So an appellate court has said, you're doing okay, and that's been for the last 6 years. So I'm very proud of that. I will tell you as I close, there has never been a more difficult time to be a prosecutor in the state of California. The pendulum has swung on us. We're dealing with changes in the laws, and we're doing our best to handle them, and I think we're doing a good job. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and I'll stick around afterwards to answer any questions. And I also want to thank all 3 of the folks that are running. It's a hard thing to run for office, and I really appreciate their efforts. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dave. So with that, we'll launch into the District 3 supervisorial election. We have 3 candidates for this office in reverse alphabetical order: Sherry Thrall, Michael Nashlin, and Joseph Momenier. Joseph is not able to be here tonight, so his sister-in-law, Maria, is going to give a 2-minute opening statement, and she will not be answering questions, so she will just give a 2-minute opening statement. So, Maria, we're going to start with you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a prepared speech by Joseph. A town that is not growing is dying, and a town that is not moving forward will quickly get left behind. It is the goal of Joseph Momenier to create a better environment for businesses as well as for families in the Almanor Basin. It is clear the county government has neglected our region. Codes regarding the maintenance of homes and properties go unenforced. Businesses will flee our county for better conditions. Our county government has been unresponsive, unaccountable, and difficult to communicate with. The people here in this room deserve better. Joseph plans to create a better environment for businesses by working with business owners and entrepreneurs to remove government barriers that shackle small businesses. Joseph plans to reach out to businesses elsewhere in the state in order to bring in better year-round employment to the Lake Almanor Basin. Tourism here is the icing on the cake, but it is not the cake. Without industry, our community will slowly die. Joseph plans to create a better environment for families by giving law enforcement the tools they need to crack down on drugs and crime. Law enforcement response times to our area are abysmal. We do not have enough deputies to cover our massive county. If we cannot fund the hiring of additional deputies, steps must be taken to increase their effectiveness. We can also make our community a better place for families by improving code enforcement. Targeting disorder makes a difference. According to the Center for Evidence-Based Crime, they found that policing strategies focused on disorder overall had a significant impact on reducing all types of crime. With the size of our county, a simple solution to reducing disorder here would be to empower the sheriff and fire departments to cite code violations. When codes are followed, both crimes and fires are reduced. In order to increase accountability, our county needs administrative officers. Thank you. That's my 2 minutes, sorry.
Thank you. So next, we'll just bring it over the line. Thank you, Maria. Thank you for coming.
Quite so snug.
So this is Michael Nashland.
Okay, so as you said, I'm Michael Nashland. First off, just introduction style. I am a former peace officer, United States Marine, and a resident here for 27 plus years. My full intent is to just delve in. I've had some negative interaction and some positive interaction with our county government. Some with my softball league that I ran for a few years, and some with my union business. Out of the grand scheme of it all, I'd like to see things like drug court come back. I think education is a little bit more important than incarceration. I think people learn from that, situations like that, a lot better than going to crime school, which is what I would call jail or prison. I'd like to say that I don't know everything, but I will find out whatever I'm asked. I've been a leader in the military. I've been a leader with our local union. I am the president and representative. I am the one that deals with all the grievances and problems at Collins Pine. And like I said, I don't have all the answers, but I am willing to research and do my best to answer questions and resolve any problems that we have.
Thank you, Michael. And Sherry Thrall.
I'm always kind of amazed when I'm introduced because I feel like I know all of you pretty well. It's been my honor and privilege to be your county supervisor for the last 11 years. And by the end of this term, it will have been 12 years. I disagree about the county being non-responsive in that I'm usually the one that most of you guys contact when you have problems with the county. And I think almost every one of you looking around the room has talked to me at least once over these years about something. I see the job of county supervisor as smoothing the way between the residents of my district and the county. And so my job mostly is running that interference for you, trying to keep the roadblocks at a minimum and the bureaucracy at a minimum. I can always try to be available at all times, to the point where people frequently are waiting for me in my driveway when I get home. So it isn't hard to find your county supervisor. It's my hope that you will allow me to continue to serve you for another term. I have many, many projects, some of which we'll probably talk about tonight, that I feel are extremely important and that I'm in the middle of working on, that I would like the privilege of completing. And I will ask you also to bear with me. I am just at the tail end of the flu. So I'm hoping that my voice will hold and that I won't have a major coughing fit. So thank you.
Okay, we'll move into the question portion, and I will try to remember to reverse the order so you all get a chance to be first and last. This question is for both of you. We'll start with you, Michael. What are your plans for youth and kids in Chester and Lake Elminoy?
Youth and kids. Well, first I'd like to see some progress on the swimming pool situation that's been for a very long time kicked around. At least I've heard quite a bit about it. And another one of my things I'd like to see is some more sporting event stuff happening with our local park here in Chester. To get, I mean, that's all I did when I was a kid was play ball, like baseball, football, whatever. And so I know that that's a lot of my time was spent in that manner. honestly, I'd like to see some more businesses come back. I miss the bowling alley. I think that was a huge loss for us in this area. Just in general, to have things for people to do. Other than that, I'm not real sure.
Well, the first thing is I've been working and have actually started out long before I was supervisor on the board of directors for our recreation district. And I continue to work with the recreation district and trying to encourage their programs. They are the government agency who is in charge of recreation and kids programs. I think we tend to forget that the rec district is a special district government agency. So basically, my job is to continue to work with them, to encourage them, to help them in every way possible. We're talking now about the potential, and I've asked them to give me a proposal for them to take over management of the rec center. And the goal of the rec center when we built it was to always turn it over to them as their recreation center. So in a long-range plan, we will be working toward what it takes to do that and make them financially viable so they can manage.
Great. Thank you. So the next question is addressed to Mr. Momonier and Mr. Nashland, but I certainly invite Sherry to answer it as well. What is your position on prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance at the opening of Board of Supervisors meetings?
My position on the Pledge of Allegiance is that I believe it should be in the beginning of most events. I fought for this country for a reason, and I believe that speaks towards that. And prayer, I have no problem with at all. Some people would say that religion has its own place, but I think everybody has their own beliefs, and I think people should have the right to exercise that. If prayer is an outlet for you, I think it's not a negative thing. I think most people should have some sort of belief in a higher power. Things are pretty amazing for just the way life came about, or however you want to believe about it. It's a pretty unique situation that we have here in our universe, so I think we should praise it in any way we can.
Well, since no one asked, I'll answer anyway. Board of Supervisors meetings are all started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I can't ever think of a time that we haven't said the Pledge of Allegiance prior to a meeting. In addition to that, a number of years ago there was controversy about prayer prior to the Board of Supervisors meeting. And with the advice of County Council, we went to all of the various churches and religions and invited them to send someone to lead us in prayer prior to each meeting. And we started out, we had a few different ministers, pastors, who showed up and did that, which was very nice. Over time, I think they found our meetings were so boring that maybe it wasn't worth the effort to go there. So we have had one gentleman who is also a chaplain who comes every meeting. And we start every meeting with a prayer. He gives that prayer during public comment. So he offers a prayer, and he has yet to ever fail to pray for wisdom on the part of the Board of Supervisors. And I can tell you that means a lot to me. And certainly I feel that it's a big part of the guidance and wisdom that we all seek in making decisions that impact all of your lives.
Thank you. We'll start with you on this question, Sherry. What would you consider your greatest contribution to the Chester community prior to running for office?
Oh my gosh. Well, that goes back a long ways. Probably over 20, almost 25 years now. I've served as an elected representative, as I said, on the Recreation and Park District when it was very first getting started and getting it going and in place. I think that was a major accomplishment for an unfunded district, which means it has no tax-based revenue. I've also worked on the board at what was the ABC Center for a number of years, and very pleased with the programs that we were able to bring to the community through the ABC Center. Trying to think of something really meaningful. One of the things I'm really proud of is the addition at Wildwood. I look around the room and see a lot of people with gray hair. I'll tell you, as we were building that addition, we walked around and chose where our rooms would be someday. So the provision of housing for our seniors and people with disabilities is one of my prouder accomplishments prior to taking this office.
Well, to be honest, I think one of my largest accomplishments prior to any of this is my 4 children. I think they're amazing. I think a lot of people enjoy them as people, as do I. So I think that's a huge accomplishment on some level. Also, I've been a union member for 7.5 years, but I've been on the executive committee for 7 of those years, which typically doesn't happen, but in lack of personnel to be on the e-board, I was lucky enough to join before I was technically supposed to. And I'm pretty happy with the, at least the financial side of the last contract that I ratified for my guys at Collins Pine. I think this community's accomplished more for me than I have for it. I'd like to do more. I serve the country. I'm ready to serve the community and give back a little bit of what I got from this place.
Thank you, and you can hang on to that, Michael, because we'll start with you on this next question. 70% of Plumas County is national forest land. What do you see as Plumas County's major concern with the National Forest System and the Forest Service?
The National Forest System?
What issues, given that 70% of Plumas County land is national forest land, what do you consider the county's major concerns with that situation?
Concerns with the land being ours. I know that people, it's labeled as a National Forest Service, but what that technically means is that it's our land. I think one of our largest concerns with our land should be wildland fire and the drought that's been our problem for a long time. I really would like to see the National Forest Service be a little bit more, I guess cleanliness would be a big issue for me. I think mastication is a very important issue. I think they need to clean up. When you go out 89 or out Highway 36 and you see Sierra Pacific lands, which pains me to say, or Collins Pines land, there's a drastic difference. You can see where those private lands stop and where Forest Service begins, and a lot of it comes with undergrowth and windfalls and all of those things being cleaned up on the private, on Collins Pine and SPI lands, and not so much on Forest Service, which I'd like to see change, because that's actually one of the largest hazards when it comes to wildland fires, which is a detriment to tourism, which we saw a few years ago with the Red Mountain Fire and those things. So I think that's my largest concern.
Well, most everybody probably already knows how I feel about this, but actually the percentage in this county is closer to 78% of the land that the county does not control, that is controlled by the federal government. We actually have 3 national forests that are part of Plumas County. The Tahoe is a little piece on the eastern side, and the Plumas, of course, and the Lassen. It is extremely challenging to work with them in that each of them has their own bureaucracy for supervisor, management structure, way of doing business, and they frequently rotate their personnel so that at about the point where you build any kind of relationship where you halfway can work with them, they move them on. So it's a constant challenge to work with them. However, because they are our largest controlling interest in land, it's extremely necessary that we do work with them. Plumas County is right now involved in a lawsuit which has been taken on by public defense. I'll put it out, not out of our budget is the best way to put it. And it's on travel management. We've been trying to impress on them the need for coordination, and we are now at the point where we've just reorganized our coordinating council and getting good participation in a format that I think will lead to better cooperation. I will tell you, we're working right now getting a permit for the top of Dyer Mountain for emergency communications with Lassen National Forest, and had very good success in working with them to receive that permit and address all of their issues. So working with the Forest Service is a necessary evil in this county, and one that requires a great deal of finesse and time.
Hang on to that, Sherry, because you can start with this question. What are your concerns about the plans to construct a thermal curtain in Lake Almanor and other cold water related issues?
Wow. That's part of the FERC relicensing of Almanor 2105. Everybody probably remembers seeing all of those signs everywhere. We have been now waiting. We actually started working on this in 2002, working on a settlement agreement. I see some faces here who worked on that. It is still at the State Water Resources Board, waiting for them to release their environmental impact report. The thermal curtain is still a viable issue with them. We are prepared to take whatever action necessary to prevent that happening, including a lawsuit. At the same time, I will say that with the relicensing of Bucks Lake, a lot of the studies that had been done for the EIR that was far outdated have recently been updated. So it will be very interesting when they release this, and we need to be prepared to take immediate action to defend the lake and our cold water pool. We've been building, during this period of time, building relationships with some of the entities who originally appeared to be our enemies, and in some cases have reached areas where we are in agreement, where we can back each other up and help each other with this. Water Board had announced they were going to be releasing this in January, and you can see that hasn't happened yet, and sometimes I wonder if it will in my lifetime. But in the meantime, it's still alive and well, and extremely important that we remain ready to fight.
On a personal level, I think I'd rot before I'd let that happen, or at least fight tooth and nail to be against it. From some of the studies that I saw, obviously I don't have the access to the same information as Sherry does, but what I saw was our water temperatures would change by up to 15 degrees, and the water temperatures in the areas that they're referring to moving the cold water to would change in levels of like a ½ degree, if not less. So I think it's something that we would definitely need to fight as hard as possible. Like I said, I don't have as much information in this situation. I just know how I feel personally about a thermal curtain happening in our lakes.
Okay, this is changing the subject a bit. Butte County recently voted to ban any cannabis dispensary in their county. Would you entertain such a vote for Plumas County? And I assume this is looking beyond the current moratorium. Michael, do you want to start with that?
Entertain a ban?
Yes.
No, I don't think I would entertain a ban. I think the state has voted in favor of at least medical and recreational use. So I think this is a subject that needs to be definitely researched and looked into thoroughly and figure out what is best when it comes to allowing people their rights, but at the same time regulating and at least controlling the situation to the best of our abilities. I have family that utilizes cannabis as medical reasons. MS being one of the larger medical situations. My uncle has reaped huge benefits, so I can't, in good conscience, oppose people being allowed and easy access to cannabis for any reasons. That's just kind of the way I feel about the situation.
Well, we could probably spend the whole rest of the evening talking about cannabis. I will say that I absolutely believe in the process that the Board of Supervisors set up to deal with cannabis. We had a working group, and that group came up with a draft ordinance. That draft ordinance has been sent to the Planning Commission for their vetting. These are public processes. All of these meetings have been public meetings, public input. The Planning Commission will be starting it when they take it up. Public meetings again, with meetings held in each of the various supervisorial districts to give you opportunity for input. After that process, then it still comes to the Board of Supervisors to be vetted, and some of us have pretty strong ideas about what we want to see and what we don't want to see. I was very uncomfortable at a previous meeting talking about how I personally felt because of my position as one of the decision makers on this. But I've talked to county council, and he says that since I'm a candidate running for office, I can tell you how I feel. So I believe that there are benefits to cannabis for medicinal purposes. Absolutely. Have seen it, know about it, know people who use it. I am very concerned, and my concern as a county supervisor is not a moral judgment, an ethical judgment, a religious judgment. It's land. Where are we going to allow these? How are we going to control them? So my very bottom line is I believe strongly that anything, whether it be growing, whether it be processing, whether it be a dispensary, needs to have a special use permit process. This gives the county the chance to notify neighbors, to take input, to put mitigations and restrictions that can be enforced on it if it's allowed. So I would say that my bottom line is I would like to see the county allowed to finish their process of public input. I do not want to see a dispenser on every corner.
Did you use your full?
I did not.
Okay, 30 seconds.
To add to kind of actually what Trey was saying, in the thought process, I almost felt like it would be similar to a liquor license situation when it came to allowing and regulating at least dispensaries to where you would have so many per area per capita, and the same situation, notification of where was it going to be, I think regulation on where and how near schools and things like that would be. I saw stuff. Follow the
At
rules.
least it didn't say sit down yet. Come up with something for sit down.
I'm not sure I can sit for it.
So we had several questions asking about the community's more vulnerable populations, veterans, children, senior citizens. I will extend this question, which asks, how do you intend to improve senior care in Plumas County and extend that to veterans and child care? Yes, Sherry, we'll start with you.
Okay, well, obviously I have a great interest and love for caring for seniors. Served a number of years as chairman of your Commission on Aging, and at the state level, and also at the Area Agency on Aging, where all of the funding for senior programs are filtered through federal, state, to area agency, and then local. County funds most of our senior programs, nutrition, home-delivered meals, the bus service that you see that takes seniors to various appointments, and the outdoor entertainment. I intend to continue to support that strongly. They receive funding from a number of different sources, not only the county general fund, but we do supplement with that. As far as youth and our most vulnerable population for youth, I think that it's extremely important, and I will say I work very closely with Tracy Holt, who is your representative on the school board, to look at what's going on in the schools and anything that the county can do to assist with that. And county MSHA funding, which is mental health funding, is being used to fund programs for youth within the schools and at the resource centers. So I can continue to pressure them to continue to provide that funding.
Appreciate that. I went to war for you.
So, as most people would assume, I have a big place, especially for veterans, in my feelings on this question, and I believe there's a severe lack of representation for our vets in this county. I've been fighting that process for 15 years when it comes to the VA. I think the mental health and wellness situation in our county is severely lacking when it comes to actually all three levels of that question. Mental health is, I think, a huge issue nationally, but also locally in our community. I kind of lost that train of thought because I have every willingness to support and find any answers that I can for seniors, youth, and especially veterans when it comes to all aspects of those things. I would support anything if I felt that it would be helpful to any of those three groups.
Changing the subject here, what would you do to improve our broadband infrastructure so we have fast, reliable internet or cell service?
Well, it's interesting. There are suddenly a number of really good programs coming through the federal government and the state government to improve broadband. And we've been actively working to try to bring some of that funding to Plumas County. One of the things that none of us likes to hear And the board has had AT&T and Verizon and Frontier, and God knows everybody else to the board and shoot them out up one side and down the other. The thing that I think we all have to face is that if everybody in our whole population in this area were their customer, it isn't the base of customers that they have in any large metropolitan area. So it's very hard to get their attention and interest. As far as working directly with them, I think that our potential is probably better through some of these broadband programs that have just been released. And so we will be continuing to work very closely with the proponents to try to bring that funding here and upgrade some of the services and systems that we have. There's also some proposal. There's a proposal from the rural electric folks over on the east side of the county are looking at some satellite service for internet, which they swear is going to be fantastic whiz-bang available to us at a cost that isn't like your first board. So I'm hoping that that will happen, but I can tell you I've talked to Frontier repeatedly over the years. And the bottom line is they really just don't care.
I'll vouch to the Frontier not caring. I've been fighting with them for like the last 3 weeks just about ridiculousness of the lack of reliability of their service. The sad thing is that there's not much else for options. Digital Path is, I guess, good for Chico, or from Chico, you know, being a local area service. And then CalNeva is pay by usage, which kind of blows my mind that that even exists anymore. I think that's, like Chair says, the hardest thing is to get anyone to have any interest in our area, just for plain and simple per capita. There's not as much here as there is 70 miles away, and they have a lot more customers in that situation. I don't know how much we regulate anyone else coming into the area, but I just recently had a conversation with AT&T that says they don't provide our area. Comcast doesn't provide our area. So I think unless we can grow like 6 times as large and gain some peak interest in people, I'm not sure there's much anybody can do about it.
Okay. So there's a great deal of interest in this room in what several of you are calling slum landlords. One person says there are 52 vacant buildings on Main Street. Somebody else cites abandoned houses up and down throughout town. And a third person talks about unmaintained residences with issues that affect communities and other residents and so on. What would you do about what several of your constituents or potential constituents are calling the slum landlord issue in Chester?
Slumlord conversation. Honestly, I would feel hard pressed to tell or to force someone to do improvements on property, especially if, when you come to Main Street, if they're having a hard time generating enough revenues to even be open or getting young businesses to come in and rent the building. I think it would be possibly a fun, intriguing venture to maybe field a committee or even start my own situation to try and help raise funds to assist people in improvements for the area too. I know that if you have this great beautiful building and right next door there's a garbage heap, people are going to see the garbage heap before they see what you're presenting. But at the same time, I actually had some friends that were affected by the thing that happened in Lassen County in Westwood particularly where there was some people went through and just cited and wrote up all kind of, I guess they want to call violations. They tried to force a friend of mine to repair his roof that was 2 years old. There was a lot of weird things that went down because of a similar situation. People trying to force improvements upon people who just flat out couldn't afford it. So I think rather than forcing improvement, maybe try to figure out a way to assist improvement to benefit everyone rather than just forcing someone to do something.
Well, that's a combination of things. First and foremost, the building's on Main Street. I'll say I'm a libertarian. I believe in your right to rent your building for what you feel it's worth, and if it sits there vacant because no one's willing to pay that, that's also your right. At one point, the chamber was really concerned because there were a number of businesses that the exteriors were just really, really bad. This is a sad commentary, but we got together and we said, okay, maybe if we go to these people and we offer to paint their building for them, clean it up and paint it and improve the appearance at no cost to them, maybe we can, improve the appearance. Let me tell you, the only one that happened to was the thrift store. Everybody else that we went to was like, absolutely no. Not interested, don't want it, don't come around my building. So, there's a limit to how much you can do with that. Code enforcement as far as private residences is another thing. And county has had its problems right now keeping a code enforcement officer with the proper certifications. And it's a very lengthy process. Unless it's a threat to health or safety, it takes almost a year to get compliance. And most of you probably saw the big mess off of 1st Street behind the little cabin. I spent a year getting that cleaned up, and it's already starting to trash up again. So it is a never-ending problem. And I'm not sure what the solution is, but code enforcement is in the process. We wrote the job description, in the process of recruiting right now, and I hope to have an officer on board very shortly. So hopefully you understand that code enforcement in Plumas County is complaint driven. We don't drive around looking for stuff. So unless there's a complaint,
So interesting.
I know, it's sort of like slack.
Please finish your sentence.
Unless there's a complaint, we will not be out investigating unless it's something that, in my riding around my territory, so to speak, I will only report things that appear to be a health and safety issue and ask them to be looked at.
So this is a related set of questions. Several people wanted to ask the similar questions, and this is moving from private property to public property. What's your opinion of the current state of community facilities in Chester? The Chester Park restrooms, the Memorial Hall? That's where we are, right? Should we repair the rec building? How would it be funded? Talk a little bit about the concern that some people have about public buildings in Chester. And Sherry, we'll start with you.
Okay, public buildings in Chester. We just did a remodel here at Memorial Hall, increased insulation to help cut some of our costs, which might be why we're cooking tonight. We replaced windows with energy efficient windows using a local contractor. We've upgraded the kitchen, and hopefully we'll continue to do upgrades on these facilities. The facilities do not generate revenue equal to what it costs to operate. So funding to maintain county facilities requires a contribution from the general fund. And in that way, that contribution is competing with the sheriff's office and the whole county budget. The rec center is a different story. The rec center, I was in the process of doing a major remodel on it and had some problems with some usage that was going on there. So that came to a stop, but we have equipment there that we plan on installing and upgrading, and hopefully that will take place soon. The park restroom is vandalized on a regular basis and is costing us a small fortune in repairing it and cleaning it, only within a day or two have it vandalized again. I upgraded the sound system at the park a number of years ago so that we could have better sound, and immediately that was vandalized. So I've had the bushes trimmed as you look at the park come from Highway 36, trimmed back so that the Sheriff's Department can keep a better eye on it, and all of us can when we drive by if we see something going on out there that doesn't look right. But as long as members of our community are willing to vandalize and destroy public property, it continues to be a financial burden to repair it rather than to take that same amount of money and upgrade.
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement because I have seen, I had a friend of mine donate his time, our local fire department donate their truck to repair lights that we showed up to our next softball game, and someone had taken a hatchet to all the wiring to everything that went up the poles. I think the park especially is going to be a tough situation until we can get a handle and figure out who and what in the heck is going on through their mind is doing and why they think it's in any way fun or appropriate to destroy the facilities that all of us would like to use. I do, however, believe that the park could generate enough revenues to sustain itself if we could get some better repairs when it comes to the actual field holes. And like I said, we had to donate our own time and money and friends to repair a lighting situation that was actually a hazard. So I'd like to see a little bit more grounds maintenance to allow us to, like myself, a couple of friends of mine that could throw softball tournaments, which bring vendors could start things and other situations that could actually generate some funds to help that facility specifically pay for itself.
This question is directed at you, Michael, and there's several of them. I'll combine them into one. Who's financing your campaign, and is any of it being financed or supported with other assets by the cannabis industry, including retailers?
Financing my campaign, myself. I really haven't had any overhead aside from signs. Other than that, I pay for my own fuel to go sign paperwork. That's about it. I started a bank account for, I have a website that I'm hopefully going to get some donations through so that I can do a few things, but I put my own $100 in it, and that's still what's in it. As of yet, I haven't even done much when it comes to generating funds. So that's about all.
Sure, would you like to respond?
No, the cannabis people are not funding my campaign. Believe me, far from it. I have really strong belief that a person who's running for this particular office should fund their own campaign. So Michael and I agree on that one. You are, through the course of being county supervisor, you are so frequently asked to make decisions that impact people in very important ways. And I have never wanted to feel obligated to somebody because they gave me money for a campaign. Or, matter of fact, most people that know me know that if they go out to eat with me, I insist on paying. I just literally do not believe in putting myself in that position. of having to make a decision and even have the remotest feeling in the back of my mind that this is a friend that contributed to my campaign. I should try to be good to him. So I've not accepted donations prior, and nor am I this year.
Thank you. Plumas County has an opioid epidemic exceeding the state rate, and the statistic that this questioner cites are 25.7 deaths per 100,000 versus the state rate of 3.7 deaths per 100,000. Why is this, in your opinion, why is this such a skewed statistic, and what are the solutions do you offer? So this is opioid epidemic.
Well, I guess that'd be me first. I think that it's a reflection on our general decline in society, truthfully. I've been working closely with Seneca Hospital District, and believe me, they have a very great concern over the prescription misuse of opiates. And many of the people that have this problem start out literally with a prescription for pain, back pain, an injury, whatever, and become hooked. And then they're willing to just about doctor shop or do whatever it takes to support that habit. We're actively working in public health to change those statistics, and I've already started to see an improvement in the statistics. I think that it's just an ongoing societal problem. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're remote, we're rural, there's not a lot of stuff to do. People here, I think probably alcoholism rates really high also, if you were to look at those statistics. It's just a situation of a rural environment, and it's a very, very sad thing. It's also a nationwide problem.
Yeah, this is a nationwide epidemic. I think until at a federal level we can control the fact that every third commercial you see on TV is a prescription medication, typically that has a worse side effect than what it's actually meant to treat. I think pharmaceutical companies in general are to blame about a lot of this stuff. They push it harder than crack dealers on corners. So I hard pressed to find an answer locally. I would give it my damnedest to assist, but until honestly the federal government starts regulating this pharmaceutical situation and maybe investing some money in finding an alternative pain medication to opioids, which every time they turn around is a different derivative of an opiate that they give people to treat for opiate addiction, which still doesn't make any sense to me. That's just a tough situation to combat.
Thank you. So Plumas County has only one incorporated city, that's the city of Portola. In your opinion, should Chester incorporate or create a township? Why or why not? Start with you, Michael.
Okay, so this is actually something that I have talked to people here locally about, and actually talking about this running for office. In my research is looking into, I'd like to see Chester become a town, get a township. It opens some avenues for grants and some taxes that we could place.
Because they can't afford to field their own public safety. It is extremely expensive to field a city government. Early on, 11 years ago, I thought, why not look into incorporating the entire Lake Almanor area, not just Chester? I figured it'd probably take 20 years of people arguing over what the name of the town would be. But it made sense to me because it spread cost around the entire basin. the more I really looked into the process of incorporation, and in particular what has to go on through LAFCO, which is the Local Agency Formation Commission, it became clear to me that it was not a viable alternative at this point in time in the Almore Basin. So basically, I would say, based on what I know and dealing on an almost daily basis with Portola and their city council, that we just don't have the economic base to support a city on our own at this point in time, much as I would like to see the city of Lake Almore.
What is your position on the sanctuary state issue in California? Would you support a non-sanctuary county for Plumas County? Sherry, we'll start with you.
Oh, interesting question. On the Board of Supervisors agenda for May 1st, I have requested that a resolution be placed on the agenda for discussion and possible action to declare that Plumas County is not a sanctuary county. And so, based on the resolution that was passed in January by Shasta County, very well written. I think it needs to be made really clear that we don't consider ourselves a sanctuary county. I don't know how my fellow board members will vote on this because it's not a discussion that we've had. But the county council reviewed the resolution today, and it will be on the board's agenda for the 1st of May. So that's my position. I don't think we want to be a sanctuary county.
Right, I like that statement. I'm 100% on this on the same ship. I would combat any sanctuary talks. I don't really have much else to say than that. I don't like the whole sanctuary situation.
Okay, Michael, this is a question for you. Are you currently employed full-time? And if so, how would you juggle the responsibilities of that job with those of supervisor?
I am currently employed. I work 62 hours a week on average at Collins Pine Company as a lead millwright. And I also have time that I have to use for union businesses, meetings, and so on. To be honest with you, if elected to the supervisor position, I actually have every intention of terminating employment with Collins Pine and have a role greater aligned with my union responsibilities. I actually would become the business agent and rep for our area, where I would be basically on-hand office representative for all personnel at Collins Pine, where if they have a problem, I would be available actually at the office, rather than now they try to contact me on the cell phone, and I do what I can when I can, but it's not my job. So I would be further employed with the union, but no longer employed with Collins Pine.
How do I? Well, let me just put it this way. County supervisor is a full-time job. It is more than a full-time job. It's a 24/7, 365 job. Because whenever you need me is when you feel free to call me, look me up, hunt me down, visit me at my office at the Copper Kettle, whatever it takes. But it's not unusual to get phone calls at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Very seldom do I have a whole weekend that I would say I can disappear. In 11 years, I have probably taken a total of 30 days off, and that was spaced over 11 years. It is an all-consuming job. There is so much material to read and digest and research and understand each issue. Most board packets are 2 or 3 inches thick, and that's every week. And that's just for what's on the board's agenda. In addition to that, you serve on, I think at this point, probably 12 or 13 different committees, commissions, and organizations that I serve on as part of my function as the county supervisor. So it is an absolute full-time, all-consuming job. Very fascinating, very challenging, but not a part-time job.
Okay, so we're back to cannabis, and this is both a who and a where question. 2 questions I'm combining. With all the empty properties around the county, are you opposed to commercial cannabis being utilized in these properties? And if so, would you favor the initiative that is currently being circulated that proposes a special bias in favor of priority residents? Do you agree with that bias? Do you think it's fair? Sherry?
Well, this was one of the things I was hesitant to talk about because it is an initiative process going on right now. And I firmly believe in the initiative process. That is our government at work. This is where we as citizens can influence government. However, on the initiative that was just referenced in the question, no, I don't support it. I almost question if it's constitutional with some of the restrictions involved. I'm not saying that there are not properties in Plumas County that might be conducive to growing cannabis. I thought for a long time that reuse of some of our old mill sites, because they had 3-phase power and so on and so forth, made sense. But as I said earlier tonight, I think every single thing needs to be looked at on an individual basis, and it depends on the property, what's being proposed to be done there, what the impacts on the neighbors and the environment would be. And in most cases, I would say I do not support that initiative. And I'm saying that as Sherry Prawl candidate for supervisor, not as the decision maker.
This is a, I don't believe any random place should be utilized for commercial cannabis now. And like I said earlier, I think I'm more interested in the allowance of these things being more on like a liquor license situation where there's a select amount per area, pay to play. You have your permit, your license to be, and regulate where and how those things are done. I don't even really like the anybody can grow 6 plants, just because that's an awful lot of cannabis for one person just to have 6 on their own. I don't know, I don't smoke pot, so I really don't understand all of that, but yeah, I think I'm more into specific regulation and designation of those areas.
Okay, this is, I'm combining a couple of questions that I think are looking at the same problem. How do you expect young families to stay here when we have no teachers, no doctors, and no safe place for children to socialize? Flipping that around, what are your plans to promote and increase tourism in Plumas County? And what can the county offer our community to increase year-round jobs and affordable housing? Start with you,
To answer the tourism question, I think we're missing out on selling ourselves and showing the world the gateway that, especially this district, this community, is for Lassen Park. This is a national park that is visited by people from everywhere in the world. And a lot of these people, if you talk to them, are are staying in Reading or in Chico and driving up from outside of this area when they could be in the neck of it, 10 minutes away from the park, even camping less than 10 minutes from the park and being completely immersed. What was I?
It's generally questions about addressing the economy and what would you do to improve the economy, which would relate to families.
Honestly, I think a biggest improvement in the economy would be to straighten out this minimum wage situation, which drives up costs of goods when you make a minimum wage at what they're proposing and finishing at. Most businesses, rather than just raising their prices or whatever, will reduce manpower and expect people to do more just to maintain the cost so that they can afford to maintain their cost, because who's going to pay 15 bucks for a hamburger? You know, I mean, the CEO of Carl's Jr. already said it when it comes to minimum wage, that I will do more with less personnel than raise my prices to a standard that won't be achieved.
Well, first off, I'd like to say that I know someone who's actively working on trying to build a center for youth that they can come and have supervision and to some extent even animal therapy, I think, if I understand it right. But on a much larger scale, the thing that I've been working with our local lodging providers for is the formation of what they call a TBID, a tourism investment district. And this would be a district that the lodging providers vote to form themselves. It's a nonprofit, so it would have its own elected board, would not be answered to the Board of Supervisors. One of the reasons I really like this is that board would control the advertising and promotion for tourism in the area and be masters of their own fate instead of being subject to the vagrancies of the county budget. County was investing pretty well in tourism for a while until we hit the recession. And then it was kind of survival mode for a county. So I'm absolutely 100% in support of the TBID. It would take in, and the way we're looking at it right now, it would take in Quincy, Indian Valley, and the Lake Allenor area. And it would be a TOT type of thing in that the lodging provider would collect a percentage from their customers, and that would go to the TBID under their control and their investment, not like TOT is treated now, which is a general fund collection. But I think that the TBID has a lot of potential, and the fact that lodging providers are willing to take this on and create this nonprofit and control their fate, I'm very interested in helping them in every way I can and removing any barriers that might be in their way of putting this together. I think it won't be too long before we'll see that come up for a vote.
Okay, we'll have two more questions and then we'll go to closing statements. In many counties and municipalities, increasing pension contributions are consuming greater and greater percentages of their budgets. Can you share some thoughts about what might be done to address that? And we'll start with you, Sherry.
Well, I think it's one of the biggest problems facing all local government nationwide. And I think it is the problem that has the potential to break local government. PERS is the retirement plan of choice, so to speak. PERS underestimated, well, they overestimated their revenue, expecting a revenue of like 7% when their actual revenue ended up being less than 1%. So what they have done is consistently increase the cost of PERS to local government, that's cities and counties, to the point that we're looking at the potential by 2020, 25 of a 44% increase in that cost in order to fund our retirement programs. And so what the county has done is we've decided that we can't allow this to continue in the manner that it is. It's impossible to buy your way out of PERS, as Loyalton found out, Sierraville. And so consequently, what we've done is we formed an investment account. So we're setting aside money each year in this investment account that is a secure investment, but a higher interest rate than what PERS pays, with the idea that this fund will build, and then we can use some of that revenue from that fund to help offset the increase in the PERS cost. That all sounds real good. We just recently set this up, and so it will be interesting to see over time what the rate of return actually is and where we go with it. But the board is dedicated to putting this money aside so that it doesn't end up being the thing that kills our local government.
Retirements. I deal with this pretty heavily actually with my my union stuff, and I think aside from individuals saving and producing for themselves, retirements as a whole are struggling across the board. So it's really one of the things where we have to help people help themselves. Like I said, I don't know much about CalPERS or any of that situation. I have my own individual retirement account that I deal with the union. So I am pretty savvy with that side, my side of retirement things, and I believe that I can pick up and at least have valid information for the upcoming side of things if I get into this office.
Okay, thank you. And the last question is, give a brief overlook of how the Board of Supervisors works with the Plumas County Sheriff's Office and other agencies of the justice system to ensure the best client care. Michael, we'll start with you.
I don't know. I haven't been there. It's something that I would have to obviously get involved with on a much higher level. But I wouldn't know until I get to that stage of involvement.
Well, the Board of Supervisors, as supervisors, we work closely with all of our criminal justice partners and control the budget of the DA's office and the sheriff and probation so that we have some control. But in the case of the officers who are elected, which would be, for instance, Mr. Hollister, the DA, Mr. Hagewood, the sheriff, they are the experts that you have elected to provide these services. So we do not, as a Board of Supervisors, tell them how to do their business. We're not even qualified to begin to do that. So it's a relationship built on trust and open communication. I can't say that there are times that I'm not really mad at one or the other of them over something, because it happens pretty frequently. But I will say, for instance, the sheriff called me tonight on an issue. So we work very closely with each other. We try to work towards solutions. I've been working most recently trying to get drug court, or some semblance of drug court, started. I'm beginning to lose hope on that, but I continue to work on it. I think that we have a good, generally speaking, I think we have a good relationship and an open relationship. I know I wouldn't hesitate to ask Mr. Hollister for assistance if I needed it, nor would I ever hesitate to contact the sheriff on any issue. So I think probation is finally starting to take some semblance of shape also. The courts, we just have a new judge. The courts are under the state, not under the county, so it requires some finesse to work with the judges in the court system. But I think think our relationship is very, very good, and I'm pleased to say that.
Thank you. So we've come to the closing statement portion of the forum, and I believe that you started, Michael, so we're going to let Sherry start, and then we'll get your closing statement. So 2 minutes.
Yippee, I made it to this point without coughing my head off, which is a miracle, believe me. As I started out saying, thank you so much for the privilege of representing you. I was very disheartened to hear one of the questions make it sound like the county is hard to get hold of and doesn't listen. So I want to say that whether I'm re-elected or not, you have me until the end of December. And I hope that all of you know that you're always welcome to contact me. Call me. My phone number's in the phone book. My information is listed on the county website. I usually have breakfast at the Copper Kettle. So, you know, please feel free to contact me with any of your concerns and any of your suggestions and input. Believe me, I've learned, if nothing else, that I do not know everything. And there is really something to learn every day at so many levels. So your input is extremely important to me. And I'm hoping that you will give me the privilege of serving you for another term. Thank you.
So firstly, I'd like to thank everybody who is here for showing up. Man, I know I have been all over this world and enjoyed myself in most of it, but I had to come back. I love it here. This is where I came from. This is who I am. People like Mr. Hernandez helped form the person I am today. So I would enjoy, I would feel a great sense of pride to represent the community that shaped me as a man. I know that most people that know me know that I'm pretty intense. I am hard to talk to sometimes, but I will always get back to you and make sure that I feel good about the end of what the conversation was, whether it be the next day that we cool off and talk, or if it's the end of the actual conversation at that moment. I have done my time with other things. I really would love to give my time back to a community that gave me a lot.
And before you say anything, I want to say, let's all give a big hand to the League of Women Voters who took their
Well, I wanted to thank you as an audience. You've been terrifically asked great questions, and you've been civil. That's a commodity that's increasingly rare in our country. So thank you for that. And I also want to add that it takes a great deal of courage to run for any public office. I think local offices may take more courage than any other level of public office. So please thank these brave candidates for coming tonight and for participating.